I want to start by acknowledging the land before we begin. We are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. And I'd like to recognize that the Algonquins are the customary keepers and defenders of the Ottawa River watershed and its tributaries. And I honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this territory, this beautiful place called Ottawa. And I uphold and I uplift the voices and the values of this host nation. So yeah, welcome. And thank you for being here this afternoon. It's a very bright place. A lot of light in this room, a lot of love. I totally appreciate that. I had a joke that I was going to put my sunglasses on because it's pretty bright in here, which I know I need that, so thank you for that. Our focus today is on breaking the silence around incest. So the poems that I'll share, they may be difficult, they might be triggering, and I've chosen less intense ones. You'll see in your book, if you bought one, that there are some more intense parts, but I save that for when you're able to be in a blanket at home, somewhere cozy where you can talk to someone. But harm forced upon children by family, it's a pretty triggering topic itself, even if you don't have a connection to incest itself. So I want you, just before we move too much forward here, more forward, to think about who will you talk to after if you need someone to talk to, and what will you do to calm your body and your mind while you're here today. So we have two therapists here in the room with us today. Of course, I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see where I am. Okay. All right, so there's Martha at the back, Martha Wiggin. So she's here in case you need some grounding techniques during the ceremony. We ask that if you do leave the room, to give her a peace sign on your way out so that she knows that you're not actually going to the bathroom and she doesn't follow you there. Okay? All right, and we also have Elaine who's going to be speaking, so you'll recognize her too. She's going to be speaking after this introduction, kind of doing the educational component. But I just want to let you know that there is someone here to help you with that. And then there are some pamphlets for services if you decide you might like some services after this, which I hope you don't, but you never know. I always say you never know what the nervous system's going to do. Yeah, I told Martha, be ready for my peace sign. I might be. Yeah. Then Raphael will take over. Yeah. Okay, so about the book. When I began writing these poems, I knew they weren't coffee table book material. I was pretty certain of that. They were like, do you want a hardcover? I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think we need hardcovers. Yeah, but silence around this topic of incest and child sexual abuse, it only forces children to carry this burden alone. And so I thought, you know what, I'm doing this. Yeah. So my hope is to shed light on the hidden harm of silence, right? Because there's problems with silence, right? And to show its impacts and how they ripple through behaviors of people and how they ripple through people's lives and families and their social interactions. So there's a big effect that these type of harms have, like long-term over a lifetime. Yeah. And I just kind of want to start this conversation. Like, it's been an interesting journey for me. Just in writing this book, it's already done what I wanted it to do in some ways. People are like, what are you writing about? And I say incest, and you just see people gasp at first. Some people share immediately. So I'm carrying a lot of stories already, which that's what I was hoping for. And then also, you also see a scatter. There are those people who are the scatterers, and you're all here in the room, so you're not the scatterers. So that's amazing to me. Yeah. At first, I wrote this for my own family. That was what the beginning of the book was about. Yeah, so it was for my own family, to help us understand what had happened to our family, and to help us heal, and to break this cycle of judgment and silence. Yeah, when that healing didn't come, I decided, it would be a good way for me, a good time for me to keep writing to help me deal with the silence that I was being placed in again, right? Since I've started writing this and talking to my family about it, you're going to hear about it in some of the poems today. Yeah, so silence is tough. So over time, I realized these words needed to reach further than my family. Yeah. to help others carry their hidden stories, like to help me carry your stories, to have those conversations with other people so you're not carrying it by yourself, to lift the shame that goes with this as well, and to offer tools for resilience. Because I'm probably one of the most resilient people you'll meet. Yeah, I love the word post-traumatic growth. It's a lovely word. Like, I feel like that's me. Yeah. So today we have Elaine Galicia-Connolly, is that right? Yeah. She'll be joining us today for an educational, research-based perspective on child sexual abuse. She comes from the standpoint of a pediatrician researcher who has transitioned into counseling and psychotherapy amidst the challenges of being an international medical graduate. She identifies herself as a grassroots physician who approaches healing from an integrative standpoint. I love that. Her insights connect directly with the themes of this book, and they remind us that knowledge is power. And it gives us motivation to keep the conversation going. The more we know about it, the more we illuminate it, the more we will keep talking about it. So you're going to be hearing from Elaine after this introduction. And then alongside me here, you've probably noticed, it's hard to miss, the cello. Yes, this is Raphael Rainmoth Brown. He's going to be joining me today while I do my poetry readings. His new album, Lifeblood, was just released Friday. It's amazing, yeah. And for both of us, the cello has been a source of life and healing. And there's a poem in there about my cello, so that you'll see my connection to it and why I really wanted Raphael to be here with me. Yeah. And so I believe the music will help us move through emotions and find moments of calm that we can share together over this hour. Yeah, it will add a lot. So thank you, Raphael. And then I also would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Bianca Bricciu, my former professor, for helping me with the sponsorship of this beautiful room. It's a beautiful place. It feels kind of cozy. You feel wrapped a little bit. I kind of like that. Yeah. And finally, my deepest gratitude goes to all of you for your courage and your curiosity and your willingness to engage in this conversation. Yeah. So we're going to begin. Once we start, once I move off here, I'd like everyone to hold any kind of applause or any kind of, appreciation until at the very, very end, when Raphael stands up, we'll know we're finished. Okay? Then we can let her loose. But we kind of want to stay in the mood because it's a story. Okay, so let's begin.
I wanted to thank you for the privilege of being able to stand before you as a witness. And I met Kathleen barely, not even 3 weeks now, I think. Right? She was looking for someone who could speak. She asked the department counseling center. I'm currently, I just finished my master's, and I'm currently in my PhD. Resilience is the topic of my research. And I gather my thesis supervisor and mentor, Dr. Laura Armstrong, suggested that I take it on. And I'm wondering, it's a bit much, it's a bit heavy. And to be honest, I had to struggle with it for a bit. Right? Some things are just too heavy. But we move on. I wanted to thank one very important person. My husband is here. And I asked him to come so that he could stand with me the way he has stood by me all these years. It's our anniversary tomorrow. Oops, I almost forgot. But he knows what I've been trying to just wrap things around with, right? So when Kathleen asked me to talk, right, she asked me about, can you just talk about the prevalence of sexual abuse in North America? And then what do we know about the abusers? How does this affect the survivors? And what needs to happen to overcome? And I'm thinking, oh, I guess Laura asked me to talk because I wanted to publish a paper that I had written with her. So I guess that's the basis for talking about. But no way do I feel sufficient to stand here. I know I make good research, so let's see where we go. Okay? So I find it tragic that incest is a widespread secret spanning cultures across history, social strata, generations, and across the globe. Interestingly, it's even found in the Bible. The Gates Foundation sponsored a study examining the global prevalence of sexual violence against children. It's a bit of a mouthful, so let's call it SVAC. Okay? Sexual violence against children and age at first exposure, using what I would call fancy statistics. Anybody here who's a statistician? No? For anybody who is a statistician, in case you want, they called it spatiotemporal Gaussian process regression. I have no clue what that is. But essentially, they're trying to wrap all the data together from different sources, right? Different cultures, different times. So they made rough approximates. And what did they find? So according to Cagney, global estimate of sexual violence against children was 18.9% or 19% for females, 15% for males. For high-income North America, because that's what Kathleen wanted me to do, right? Which included Canada, the US, and Greenland. Canada was 25% roughly versus 12.4. This is 2023 statistics from pooled data from 1990 to 2023, but it was just published in 2025 of March, if I believed. US 27.5, 16.1 for males. Greenland, well, essentially, what does this mean for us? Females are almost twice as likely to be victimized as males, and substantial proportions happen before 12 years of age. Why am I talking about these statistics? Because it becomes relevant when we are wanting to do something, right? So we'll get to that later. However, even the authors understand that the prevalence of their statistics are underestimates. So there's this interesting thing that came out of Ancestry DNA. If you read The Atlantic, there was an article in March 2024 that came out that in the rough ideas of incest is being detected now by DNA. Why? Those are children looking for their parents, right? And we're able to submit their data to a third party. And what they look for in the DNA is what they call, anybody who's interested in genetics, rows of homozygosity, wherein there are parallels of your DNA that look very similar, that says, your parents are related. And so can you imagine the burden that this geneticist found? She couldn't say anything, right? But sometimes when someone is very, driven to look for their birth mother or their birth father, right? They pursue it. And that's how they got some estimates. Okay? So I can talk to you about statistics, but really, that's really, really very low. Okay? What do we know about the perpetrators? They say roughly 92% are perpetrated by one or both parents. It's a widespread issue, right? And about the remaining percentage, right, is someone known to the child. It's never a stranger. Who is that? Possibly the partner of the parent, a step-parent, or like a stepfather. Interestingly, they say that the presence of a stepfather in a home increases the risk for a child, a female child, by 100%. So if the risk is 25%, it becomes 50% in the presence of a step-parent. Who's the other persons? People who are entrusted to care for this child. They are familiar people. Okay? A monster in the midst. Frankel's article wrote about trying to take a systems narrative approach. He even calls it, she even calls it feminist, right? And she was talking about essentially 4 things that were highlighted in her article. The dynamics of ongoing abuse. Often this extends into adulthood. When does it stop? Only when the perpetrator dies or gets sick. And ergo, it's lifelong abuse. Can you imagine what that does to a child? Right? Attachment dynamics. Victims may have trauma bonds. Right? I'm gathering there are a lot of therapists here. Right? Familiar with Satir? Yes, Virginia Satir. So Virginia Satir talks about abnormal communication dynamics, right? And when I was writing the paper, I said, wait a minute, this holds parallels to the brain's response to abuse and trauma. So we'll talk about that a bit later. Dissociative processes. The victims often dissociate. Why? Because it is their only escape, or else the self is annihilated. They cannot stand reality, and therefore they dissociate. So for therapists, right, it's an aha moment. And I remember when I got my first client who kept on dissociating, the only thing I could say to this client is, it's okay. And he was pretending to be a cat. And so I took the persona of the other cat. And it seemed to work, right? And there were many voices. But I have to say that after each session, my heart broke. And I just had to pray myself through. Thank goodness my husband feeds me. You know, he makes me dinner. But yeah, this person was, had just turned legally into an adult. And so for us therapists, or anybody who works with these people, right, or these victims, we have to understand the effect of it. Now, what's another myth that they say? Brothers collude. Not necessarily. They say absent, non-protective, sometimes abusive mothers. Right? Often the mothers are victims themselves. They do not know any better, or they're too busy. Right? They work at night, and step-parent or whoever is the perpetrator is taking care of the kids. This is what happens. The loss or absence of a mother, a non-protective mother who herself may have been incestually abused or has unresolved trauma or losses in her life. A dissociative mother herself, or an abusive or participant mother deprives the victim of much needed protection and intervention. Tragically, some fathers use their daughters as wife surrogates when a mother is absent for any reason. And so again, When you're approaching it from a system, it's like there's a lot going on. Finally, social isolation, limiting the capacity to get help or escape. We all know that. Incest is taboo. Nobody talks about it. We are just starting to do so. So it requires courage for a victim to come forward and say something. And I can only say we can only be very gentle with them and see where they're at, walk with them. So now it's got to the fun part. How does childhood sexual abuse affect survivors? Brain stuff. Oop, previous slide, please. What did I want to point out to you? Very important. Prefrontal cortex. Very important with regards to how one manages trauma. You may encounter it as executive function. What is executive function? Anything to do with your impulse control, decision making. The executive, right, the person who thinks, technically, when does that kick in? Biologically, they say guesstimate about 16, 18 years old, roughly, right? But some children, when they are parentified, it kicks in much, much earlier. And that's why they say, like, some children are more mature. So how does the abuse affect the survivor? Essentially, can you imagine the body being bathed in a lot of stress hormones? If there's going to be a fire right in this room, your body will start to tell you, run, right? Fight or flight, right? We all know that. But the thing is that, can you imagine this is sustained throughout the body, right? Your adrenaline, they call it catecholamines, and your cortisol, everything else is kicking in, telling you, run, hide. What do other kids do? They fawn. I'll do anything you want, right? Or they fight. So chronic stress also affects your immune system and explains everything. If you have inflammatory diseases, can you imagine? All of this bathing your body. So fibromyalgia, headaches, any kind of pain, that will bathe the body. So elevated stress hormones also affect the brain globally. And I think I have the next slide. What did I want to show you? This little thing, that P-shaped thing, is your amygdala. It's not just one structure, you have two. It's roughly the size of an almond. And it is very close to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, which is subservient to the hypothalamus. And this is the endocrine system. Okay? So all of this are all interregulated, are all joined together. And it's telling the brain, the brain is telling the body and the prefrontal cortex, not safe, not safe. So can you imagine that, right? So the amygdala, they say, is hyper-responsive, and the frontal cortex, the ability to decide, make decisions, weigh, is this good, bad, which is a better thing to do. It cannot function properly. Obviously, there will also be, and it's not unexpected, poor academic performance in children, right? Makes sense, yeah? Emotional implications. Well, I would say, like, the core of it, from what I have read, is rooted in unhealthy shame and guilt. Right? Children wrestle with loyalty bonds, or loyalty binds rather. And the paper of Frankel was saying that the thing that was worrying the kids the most was that they were going to disrupt the family and would feel guilty about it. So the thing with unhealthy shame or guilt is that it's not, I did something bad. Right? Guilt is doing something bad, but I am bad. I am dirty. I am worthless. So it's all rooted in a very poor sense of self-esteem. So if you don't have that self-esteem, which manages resilience and everything else, right? Your ability to decide, make decisions. Young children are even said to lose their developmental milestones. What does that mean? They start to bedwet, right? Some of them will have night terrors, clinging behavior, or stranger anxiety. And this is a clue. If it is not within the developmental milestone of a kid, of a child, or it is unusual behavior, it might be something worth exploring. So we were talking about satir survival stances, and I was writing it from the perspective of self-esteem, right? Satir's survival stances are blaming, being irrelevant, like blaming, it's your fault, right? Being irrelevant, like your head's in the clouds. Being super reasonable, computing, or like just being out of facts, or just placating, which correspond to the fight, the flight, the freeze, and the fawn.